Our guest today is Christian Helms, founder and creative director of Helms Workshop, an award-winning branding agency behind iconic work for names like Jack Daniels, Hershey, Austin Beerworks, and Howler Bros. Christian's career took an unexpected turn when a long, undiagnosed battle with Lyme disease forced him to rebuild his life from the ground up, using the very tools he'd spent years applying to brands: clarity, storytelling, and purpose. And today, he speaks around the world on creativity, personal branding, resilience, and finding meaning in the chaos. This conversation is going to explore what happens when branding stops being just a business tool and becomes a way to design the life you actually want to live. So please welcome to the podcast, Christian Helms. Welcome. Welcome to the Engaging Personalities Podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Hey, Anders, great to be here.
Awesome. So Christian, let's kind of start with that. Let's start at the start. How did you get into marketing in the first place? Let's kind of follow that trajectory, and then let's talk about your diagnosis and how things changed.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, just a few thousand people, and this is pre-internet, so there wasn't a lot of access to like what was possible out in the world other than what I saw. So I saw people working at the Quickie Mart, I saw people working at the mill, I saw people raising cattle, but didn't see a lot of folks doing branding and marketing. And the stuff I would see, like a Doritos package, that stuff doesn't look like it's designed by a human. It looks like a computer just kind of spit it out, you know? So I never really put two and two together that that could be a job. Went to the University of North Carolina for writing, journalism specifically, and at the very end of J school, found this obscure class that was essentially an intro to the ideas of design. And I was like, this is it, right? It combines all the art stuff that I love with all the like critical thinking and writing that I love. Like this is what I want to do. So I had to go to grad school to get good at it.
Very cool. And then what was your first foray into the workforce after education?
Oh man, in the time between graduating Carolina and starting grad school about a year later, I worked in the basement of the food service building doing design for Sodexo, who did all the food service around campus. So signs, flyers, promos, just whatever. It was it was weird and wonderful, and I was glad to go to grad school for sure.
Excellent. And then one like did at what point did you start kind of get your own agency happening? Like
Yeah, definitely. I got an internship at a firm called Pentagram in New York and was there for a good while. Came down here and worked for an amazing advertising and branding agency called McGarrett Jesse. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of work in the music industry freelance. I'm a 90s indie rock kid, and just, really passionate about music. And I was going to shows like 5 nights a week, so I figured they might as well pay me to be here, right? So I ended up working with bands like Spoon, Modest Mouse, Wilco, The National, all these bands that I just absolutely love, The Hold Steady. And it was so fun and lucrative enough that I could leave the position that I was in at McGarrett Jesse and start doing my own thing.
very cool. And working with bands. That's
Yeah, it's
uh
great.
that's pretty niche. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. And then so how long ago did this Lyme disease diagnosis happen?
It's a handful of years ago. And essentially what happened, I just started feeling awful, kind of like a lightning bolt out of nowhere. Physically, like sore, achy joints, a lot of skin pain, and an amazing amount of brain fog. Like you could tell me a
Yeah.
phone number and I couldn't write it down before I would forget it.
Wow.
And it got to the point where, I couldn't walk across the room without having to sit down and rest for a minute. It was
Wow.
completely crippling. So unfortunately, I was not diagnosed for like a year and a half, which made things worse.
Well,
There was a lot of,
and that happens with Lyme disease, doesn't it?
it
Like
does.
it's a really like is there no real test for it, or they just kind of eventually come to that
There
at
is a
some point?
test, but it
Okay.
presents so differently in different people that it can be hard to pin down.
Yeah.
There was actually a vaccine that you could take back in the 70s, and they discontinued it. It's supposed to be coming back in a few years. But I have no idea why they discontinued it because it's an awful, awful disease.
Yeah.
Mm. Long story short, I bounced around the country to different doctors who would say, it's just in your head. Oh, it's fibromyalgia. Oh,
Oh boy.
it's Epstein-Barr. Oh, it's just you're just depressed. Take a walk in nature. And I'm like, that is not the answer. And I eventually ended up at a doctor in New York who said, do you think it could be Lyme? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know anything about Lyme.
You're the doctor, man. Like you
Yeah.
tell me. Like
So he did the test, and boom, I
yeah.
had Lyme disease and then
Yeah.
another tick-borne disease called ehrlichiosis that can actually be worse, and fatal. Um, so that was the start, but then they couldn't figure out how to treat it. It had been so long since I had contracted it that there was a lot of what they thought was just permanent damage done that I was not going to be able to get back, which is not an answer I was psyched about, right?
No, no, that's
Um,
depressing. Yeah.
and eventually, the doctor sent me to a holistic practitioner in Pennsylvania. And he basically said, this is the guy I send people to when I have no idea what to do. And I was like, well, let's go. And
Yeah.
that guy coached me talking on the phone like 3 or 4 times a day for a couple of years and slowly built myself back to
Wow.
health. It was pretty remarkable.
And so what affects like or how does Lyme disease affect your life today then when you said they it built you back? Like how, is it
I have an
limitations?
amazing appreciation for my family and what I do, and
Yeah.
just being able to take a walk without, feeling awful. I think
Yeah.
it builds a lot of empathy for people, and it really changed the way I look at the world and what I do and all those things. There was a lot of clarity in finding what was important, and I essentially did that by taking myself through the branding process. I had been MIA for a few years, both socially and
Right.
professionally. We were a hotshot young agency, and folks had started forgetting about us because we were barely visible. So I had to kind of build the business and my life back at the same time. And it wasn't easy, but it was enlightening, and I'm so much better for it.
So you yeah, because in a way you're a different person now.
Hmm.
And so
Both
taking
physically,
stock
mentally,
of
yeah.
yeah, taking stock of who you were personally and and maybe where the business is too. So when you say you looked at that like what you were, how you'd approach a brand, I guess, right? Like who am I now? What do I want to bring into the
Yeah.
world? You started working on your personal brand. Is that kind of, you know, the
Yeah,
idea
exactly.
with
I
that?
mean, the best branding builds a bridge between who you are today, defining that, and then what you want to become. So there's a factual, gut truth, honest part of it that you've got to be real about who you are, what you're about. It can't be fabricated or it just feels insincere and inauthentic. And then where you want to go and what you're going to work towards. And that aspirational aspect is really important, but you also can't overdo that because at some point you get beyond the realm of possibility. And again, it just doesn't seem authentic.
Yeah, it gets a little too airy fairy or out there and people just don't buy into it, right? Like they just
Yeah, I
can't
mean, I'd love to
connect.
be a pro forward for the Bulls, but man, that's not happening. So
Yeah.
you got to
Yeah.
recalibrate a little bit there.
Yeah. So what do you think most people get wrong about personal branding? Is it that like just not authentic enough or what do you see out there that people are doing?
Fabrication is a big problem. Getting obsessed with the platform rather than the messaging and relationship building. So, you can have a really polished LinkedIn profile, but if you're not sharing content that is of value to people, if you're just, blatantly self-promoting, people get sick of that pretty quickly. But if you can share things that are valuable to people, both in your professional life and in your personal life, being of service, helping folks out, sharing insights, that's a fantastic thing. Yeah, I think, there is personal branding or life design, as I like to call it, and then there's just like blatant influencer social media stuff, and those are not the same thing.
Yeah, like and if I'm getting what you're saying, from the business or professional side, providing value that would maybe connect with your ICP, your ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
But then on the personal side, here's something that everyone can relate to. Here's something that, and if you're sharing that perhaps that gets liked and shared and expands your, sphere of influence, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
they work together in tandem. Is that kind of the
Yeah,
idea?
I think so. I think probably the most response I've gotten on a LinkedIn post was where I essentially told this story and how it relates to what I do. It took me a long time to be really vocal about it because I guess I was kind of ashamed, or I don't know.
Well, it's
But I was hesitant to
vulnerable
talk
thing,
about it.
right?
Yeah, it's
Like,
really personal.
yeah,
Um, and I could tell you stories you would not believe about that time period. But eventually I kind of realized that it could be helpful to some folks.
for sure.
And honestly, anytime I can be vocal about Lyme, I will because it's still so misunderstood and not recognized to the level it should be.
Yeah, and so is that something that you share and teach, is how to be more vulnerable with your personal branding? Like is it, and that can be a delicate balance
Yeah,
too, I bet, because not, I don't know if it's oversharing, but like just sometimes,
TMI, yeah.
yeah, put themselves out there so much that like, ooh, I don't know, like, how do you,
Yeah, I
how do
think
you,
there's an oversharing aspect too, where
yeah,
folks post on social media like grocery store run. Like no one cares that you're going to the grocery store, you know? So it does have to be a value. And I think there is certainly the possibility of oversharing or sharing things that are inappropriate or or aren't relevant to the people you're talking to. I guess really I don't preach it as much as I do it. I kind of try to lead by example in that way. You
yeah.
sort of have to walk the walk, you know. But I do talks on this pretty frequently, and I will talk about that a little bit. And just through how candid and transparent I am, I think it helps folks understand that it can be okay and even entertaining and funny at times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you know, the I mean, vulnerability, I feel like, is having a moment, or is still having a moment from some years ago. And for us to, get more comfortable with being uncomfortable and
Yeah.
sharing, it does help people relate though and connect, right? Like, do you see that even on like the corporate professional branding side of things, where, I mean, authenticity is definitely, still a thing too, and I
Absolutely.
don't see that going away. But yeah, do you see that mirroring of the professional and personal side of things with the
Yeah,
vulnerability?
definitely. I mean, we try really hard to build brands with humanity, brands with,
Yeah,
with character and a point of view and wit and even humor, that speak to people like they're people, which sounds obvious, but a lot of brands and marketing don't speak to people like they're people. They're just kind of shouting into the void, you know.
yeah,
And the more you can engage and start to build those relationships with the people that you're talking to, you start to get past like the functional benefits of a brand, and you start to get into the emotional and the social benefits, how it makes them feel about themselves to be associated with the brand, and what it says about them to other people, which can often be even more powerful. And done the right way, that's powerful stuff.
and so when you said the emotional and the, sorry, what was the other part you said? The emotional and
The
the
emotional and the social benefits of the brand.
social benefits, that really speaks to that humanity piece to me. Like, that, is there other ways that you recommend creating, like bring more humanity to a brand?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that idea of brands with personality and a point of view. Um,
Yeah.
I would rather have, X number of people see the brand communication and say that's not for me than everybody just kind of think it's okay. If you're trying to
Right.
address everybody, you're not really going to connect with anybody.
That reminds me of, I forget what book I read it from, but the rule of thirds in car design,
Totally.
right? And that a third of the people won't even notice it, a third of the people will love it, and a third of people will hate it, right? And that, like, what was it? Was it the Chevy Aztec? What was that Aztec kind of thing
Oh,
where?
that awful vehicle.
Well, see, you're in that third. Yeah, I kind of thought it was kind of cool, right? So, but yeah, if you try to make something that everyone will sort of like, then it's just too vanilla, right? So, having that point of view, making a statement of some sort is important for the branding.
Absolutely.
um, yeah, what's one of your favorite campaigns that you worked on, and tell us why, and maybe that with from the humanity side of things, how things changed and how you're able to kind of bring that personality to life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jack Daniels was a ton of fun. Southern Comfort was a ton of fun. But I think really one of my favorites is a much smaller brand and campaign for a brewery called Austin Beerworks here in town. And we essentially, I took them to the convenience store and had them stand in front of shelves and look at beer and just note everything that was a cliche or that everyone was doing. So at the time, mountains and fields of wheat and dogs and, a stream coming through the middle. And essentially one by one, I was like, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. If you see it on the shelf, we can't do any of those moves. Like we have
It's
to do
been
something
done, right?
independent.
Like it's
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And so we ended up building this bold, stark packaging system that just stood out like crazy. I had a former classmate ask, like, is this beer for superheroes? Like, it doesn't even look like beer. And I'm like, that's exactly what we're going for.
Right.
That extended into a campaign to introduce a beer of theirs that was they classified it as an extra pale ale, which was confusing as hell to consumers, right? Like, is it a hardcore pale ale that's really strong, or is it extra pale and light and drinkable? The answer was the latter, but we needed to build a campaign to really introduce that idea. So we renamed it Anytime Ale to kind of cue the idea that, oh, you can kind of have this anytime. And if you can have it anytime, you should probably have a lot around. So we said, this is your chance to do the first multi-pack that you're going to do. Long story short, we ended up producing the world's first 99 pack of beer. It was
What?
7.5 feet tall. It weighed like 80 pounds. It was amazing. And it made global news. Like it literally, you know,
Oh,
Comedy
wow.
Central, front page of Reddit, Good Morning America, Today Show, just everywhere for a few weeks. It was huge for this tiny little brewery in Austin. And we still get asked about it. It'll probably be on my tombstone.
Well,
Because
that's,
it's
I
sort of
mean,
our
it's
claim to
the
fame
go
and
big or go
ridiculousness.
home, right? Like it's a total like statement. Now, was it really for sale? Like it was for sale through the
It
brewery?
was
Like
for sale. No, it
how
went
many
out
people
into
bought
retail.
it?
A
Really?
lot.
So really?
There were
So that
people
would be
following it and live posting on
yeah,
Twitter where the van was going so that people could grab them before they
yeah.
even got on shelves. It was insane. It was wild.
Wow.
It
Because
was so much fun.
yeah, just the novelty of it drove, that kind of feeding frenzy, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think one of the best things that we do and that I love about branding and marketing is you might be at the bar with friends or colleagues and make a joke about a 99 pack of beer, right? But then you get up the
Yeah,
next day and go back to work and forget about it. We
right.
do it. We just
Yeah. Well,
absolutely go ahead and do it.
yeah. I mean, that's a party right there. Like you gotta like, I drink beer, but not that much. That would be it'd be going bad on me. I would not be able to dig into that soon enough,
We
I think. But
recommended that a group go in on it. It's a pretty big
yeah.
commitment for yourself. I agree.
No kidding. So now that Austin Beer Works now, in terms of the personality and the branding, and you talked a little bit about the superhero thing, and that kind of I could kind of see that connect. How would you describe, the humanity of that company, just to kind of like connect it back to that like campaign?
Yeah, I think part of it is just the uniqueness of the packaging says we're different and that's okay. You're different
Yeah.
too, and that's great. And then the other piece is not just the packaging or the logo or the website, but just the entire brand world we built around it, which was full of humor and we would hide Easter eggs on the packaging and just all these little things that
Touches.
help
Yeah.
people kind of have those moments of surprise and delight. Like we did another multi-pack and what we did was it was one of those sort of self-constructing cartons that fold over in the bottom to close. And so inside those folds, we put all this little Easter egg messaging that you wouldn't even notice until you broke it down to recycle it. Just things like that.
Yeah. 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 That's cool. I like how that creativity merging with and you don't even really get credit for it until it's such an inside joke,
Yeah. Yeah.
that you have to wait for people just to kind of, talk about it maybe on social
It's
or something
great
like
though.
that,
Like
right? Yeah.
if it's something they don't see until their second or third visit or
Right.
purchase, that's great. You're just continuing the conversation. You're continuing to surprise them.
Yeah. Those subtleties, it's
Mhm.
like if it's one thing to kind of slap someone in the face and like, here, look at this. But then when they go deeper, it reminds me of there was uh, it was a performance slash kind of warehouse kind of thing in Vegas. It was called the Speed of Dark and Particle Inc. Speed of Dark. And it was an ex Cirque du Soleil performer got this idea for this kind of performance space, and there's all this lore in behind the storytelling that happens, and it's a lot of projected light. And
Yeah.
the thing is, you're giving free time to wander through this space, and there's so many notes and like drawings and things, and it's like you're in a video game trying to figure out what's going on,
Yeah.
right?
Man, that's
It's just
fantastic. It's completely
yeah.
immersive, right? That's what you're
Oh, it
going
very
for. It's like
and
you were in it. You're not watching
right.
it. You were a part of it and you were in it.
And then something would start up in the corner and you go, what's going on over here? And then people would collect, but that
Yeah.
act would actually happen twice or three times. And then there was more of the central piece of it where the storytelling, the narrative piece, and everyone would then be,
Yeah.
kind of guided through that. So, but it was kind of like you could go back to it again and again because you're like, I don't know if I got the whole story. I
Different
just want to like,
facets.
yeah. So it's like, that's really cool. We work with a lot of trade show companies. And do you have any experience in working on a campaign that had to do with trade shows at all, or is just
Um,
because I love your humanity? So many companies we work with, they need more of that humanity.
yeah, a bit here or there, but we've never really gotten to take a big bite in that
Yeah,
regard. And I'm a huge fan of just amazing over the top trade show stuff.
yeah,
I go to Expo West every so often. I don't go every year. But
yeah,
man, some of those displays and interactive environments are just
yeah,
insane. It's
yeah.
awesome.
Expo West is an interesting show, and for me, like because it's all consumer products,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the samples are king there, right? And it
Which you
almost
get sick of pretty quick. You're so
well,
excited in the beginning, and then you're like,
yeah.
I feel disgusting.
Well, and I worked for a company last year. They did laundry strips. So it's kind of like you don't use the big laundry detergent
Yeah,
plastic
yeah.
jugs. You just use, and so there's no, everything's recyclable and there's no waste from it. Well, their like smallest packaging is still a thing that's worth like $30 or something, right? Like it's a year's worth of laundry that
Yeah.
the sample is, but we were giving them away to the right people. And so the display
That's neat.
package was taped down, like with showing it, and people were ripping it out. Like obviously it's like no, but so that like that gimme mentality of Expo West like almost turned me off trade shows a little bit. It was like just
We
like,
had the
oh, like
same problem. We
yeah,
took one of our sparkling water brands there, and we were introducing a couple of flavors that weren't out yet. And the number of times people swiped that sample can off the
yeah.
table and just threw it in their bag, and we had to chase them down was remarkable. We
Well,
eventually
and
glued it down. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and speaking of bags, there was some sort of fun pink kind of puffy bag that was being given out by a company, and it got so popular that they last one. It started a fist fight between two women fighting over this lot. Like, so that's where it's kind of like that's like it's too much, too much.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So Christian, tell me like what in terms of the personal brand and that like we talked a little bit about the vulnerability, the sharing, the rebranding. How would you compare your personal brand before your diagnosis and then afterwards? How did that shift? Because I'm coming back to that, but I find that fascinating.
yeah. I think professionally, I was relatively early in my career when I was hit with all this. And when you're early in your career, you're trying to kind of prove to everybody how smart you are. So you're using a lot of lingo and terminology and buzzwords and all that kind of stuff to essentially justify like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm good at this. Well, at this point and after that, I've done this forever at this point. I've been doing this for like 30 years. So I'm confident and comfortable in what I know and what I don't know. And I try to explain things to people as simply as possible. I don't try to prove to them how smart or talented I am. I try to share things with them that help them understand how to get where they want to go.
I always say that the best communicators are not trying to make themselves look smart. They're trying to make everyone understand. Right?
Absolutely.
Just to be able to connect with the lowest common denominator in the room, and not putting down other people, but just that idea that we
Yeah.
want
Being
everyone to be on
accessible.
board. You don't want to lose anyone. Keep the things simple. That's the way to do it. Christian, what do you see, coming into the future if you were to kind of look into your crystal ball in terms of branding, in terms of marketing? where are we headed, or what are some of the trends you're seeing develop?
Well, I mean, no surprise. I think everybody knows the biggest conversation right now is AI and just how it's going to affect the industry. And we're actually in the process of defining our stance on it as an agency because there's so many diverse opinions within the building. We have team members who embrace it and use it as a tool. We have other team members who think it's the devil and won't even consider it. And I think we're going to see obviously huge leaps and bounds in terms of what you can do with that stuff. But the thing that I always tell folks is one, it's a tool, so you can use it to do great things or you can use it to do bad work. And then two, essentially, at least at this stage, it's a learning language model, right? So it's a summation of everything that's out there in the world. So it's not original thought, it's not something new and unexpected. It is a summation of all the data it could get. And that's kind of the opposite of what we want to do in branding and marketing, right? Like we want to come up with something like the 99 pack that no one's ever seen before. And at least at this point, AI is just not really capable of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can really relate to, this idea that we don't want to just start spinning out what everyone's done. Like we're
Yeah,
like if everyone used AI for marketing, everyone would start just saying the same thing and
be
copying each other.
homogenous,
And it's
absolutely.
yeah, and it's not serving anyone at that point, right? Like and I can see the time savings for certain things, but from a stamp of creativity and originality, uniqueness, you have to kind of know, use that as a jumping off point, but then add your own spin to it, right? And to do that kind of piece. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I
absolutely.
mean,
I
we
think
talk a lot about. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's like a concept or idea generation tool. It can be good because it may put things on your radar that you weren't thinking about. But then exactly, you've got to build on that. And really, a lot of that is just about lateral thinking, right? Like not going from A to B to C. Um, that's how you get a brand like IBM, International Business Machines, right? Like not very sexy, but it does describe the company. But lateral thinking, you go from A to baseball bat to cantaloupe. And those jags side to side are wildly creative. And if you then apply that to the problem you're solving, we were using computers as an example. That's how Apple ended up with the name Apple. They did exercises like this, got into a place not straight on in their industry, but a little bit off to the side, and then looked and said, how does that relate to what we do? And
Yeah.
Steve Jobs wanted that identity to be happy, accessible, friendly, etc. And Apple really did that.
Yeah, I mean, what you just described about, moving yourself to a different perspective. Like there's so many of those creative exercises where you're basically almost putting on a different hat and say, how would
Mhm.
asking yourself that, or like, what is the connection between these two, items or something like that? How could these be used in generating those creative ideas?
Definitely.
I feel like if we're not careful, and this leaning on AI too much, are we going to not lose the ability, but like, I don't know, just people like we see that where, um, you know, people are losing certain engagement skills because they just don't have to do certain things, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
we're passionate about that at Engagify. Are you seeing that as well, possibly? Like what's that next, generation of creatives coming into the industry? What are they you know, gonna be able to do on their own, I guess?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I think, AI and just technology in general has created a situation where you don't have to do as much, which means you don't learn as much, which means you don't build as much mental muscle. I always lament the fact that once the iPhone showed up, the argument you'd have at the bar with your buddies over who played guitar on that one song by David Bowie went out the window because everybody could just look it up. And
Yeah.
if you read that and really internalize it, or you are in this debate and learn it that way, you will remember that. If you look it up quick on your phone and then close it, you're not going to retain that information.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so done so quickly. You
Yeah,
don't, we're not, and then, yeah, there's so many, knowledge is cheap, right? And all, anything,
it can be. Yeah.
but the communication of that, whether that lands, whether that's remembered, I think that's where the power is, or, that's where, agencies like yours, or people who are good communicators and good storytellers, I think that's what really is going to differentiate people in the future.
Yeah, storytelling is always going to be powerful. It's one of the most powerful ways we can share information. Obviously, we've been doing it for eons. So I would hate to see it put a dent in that. I grew up in the South with a family full of storytellers, so it's very important to me and very close to my heart. And I would hate to see that kind of commoditized and homogenized through just, again, all the stuff we talked about with AI.
Yeah. Being regurgitated and just kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
spun up. Well, Christian, where can people, reach out to you if, and what kind of, companies do you work with, just in case someone's listening and they go, hey, maybe you could help us.
We do a lot of consumer packaged goods work. So, Hershey, Jack Daniels, Southern Comfort, Everlywell, the health company, Tecovas Boots, you name it. We also do a lot of hospitality work. We have an amazing client called Blackberry Farm and Blackberry Mountain in the mountains of Tennessee, kind of the epitome of hospitality in the U.S. and known internationally. And then we work on a little bit of stuff outside of that in the outdoor adventure and lifestyle space with brands like Howler Brothers, etc. That's kind of our sweet spot.
Okay. And where can people find you on socials?
Yeah, helmsworkshop.com, which on Instagram is helms_workshop.com, and then T Christian Helms on Instagram for me personally. But I'm a lot better on
Awesome.
LinkedIn than I am on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm more and more I go, I'm just like, LinkedIn's where I want to be, just for my, business.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I'd rather do one platform well than do six in a mediocre way.
amen to that. Yeah, yeah, very good. Christian, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about your business life and your personal life. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks a bunch, Anders. It was a lot of fun.
Good stuff. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in once again. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged. Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement and you're an industry leader or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engagify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and stay engaged.